Welcome to this explainer where we're going to break down an absolutely incredible journey of escalating automotive value. We're talking about examining exactly what you get as car prices skyrocket from literal pocket change all the way to astronomical fortunes. It's this fascinating look into human ingenuity, luxury, and of course, history. We're going to dive into a massive spectrum of vehicles, analyzing the precise features, materials, and stories that somehow justify these unbelievable price tags. Okay, so let's dive right in by anchoring our minds to a figure that is nearly incomprehensible for a single vehicle. $100 million. Seriously, just sit with that number for a second. That is literally the gross domestic product of a small island nation, and it's entirely wrapped up in four wheels and a steering wheel. So what exactly are you paying for when a car costs $100 million? We're going to explore this fundamental question by tracking an escalating spectrum of vehicles. We want to see how value shifts from basic utility to extreme technology and eventually into the realm of priceless history. How do we get from something anyone can afford to an asset so valuable it practically requires a small army to protect it? Section 1, the $1 baseline, where value begins. Because to truly appreciate a $100 million machine, we have to start at the absolute bottom. For a single, solitary dollar, you get exactly what you'd expect, a literal piece of garbage. We're talking about a smoke-smelling rust bucket that completely lacks its most basic utility, the ability to actually drive. It's just a shell. To even make this $1 purchase move, you have to inject a cool $20,000 of repairs into it, and this establishes our baseline. At the very bottom of the market, money simply buys the most fundamental mechanical function. Section 2, Utility and Extreme Tech, paying for the impossible. Let's see what happens as we jump into this six-figure range. Now, what's really interesting here is how value at this tier is entirely driven by highly specialized, almost cinematic utility. I mean, for $300,000, you're buying a military-grade tank. It's equipped with thick, bulletproof glass, a literal smokescreen button, and an explosive-proof frame that can survive a bomb blast, keeping you perfectly safe with just a few window dents. Moving up to $500,000, that gets you the boat car. You can drive this thing straight off the highway into the ocean. It seamlessly transforms, and it's fast enough to literally race across the water. And for $600,000, you get the flying car, a completely street-legal vehicle equipped with a propeller and wings that can take you 8,000 feet into the sky. At this price point, you aren't just buying transportation. You're paying to survive explosions, conquer the ocean, and touch the clouds. And as we hit the $2 million mark, we enter the wild realm of experimental technology. You aren't just buying utility anymore, you are funding the future. This $2 million hydrogen vehicle is a one-of-a-kind, totally unproven prototype. Actually, it's so experimental that taking it on public roads is legally questionable. But just listen to these specs. It boasts a range of over 1,000 miles, it hits a top speed of 221 miles per hour, and the craziest part? Because it runs on hydrogen instead of gas, its exhaust is pure, drinkable water. No carbon emissions, just water. The value here lies entirely in innovation and pushing the absolute boundaries of what a car can even be. Section 3, the pinnacle of performance, bespoke speed and exclusivity. Let's move beyond those experimental prototypes and look at the 8-figure price tags. So the crucial takeaway here is that at $10 million, you're paying for absolute singularity. This is the Koenigsegg Vader, and it's the only one in existence. Built to be the world's fastest production car, it's powered by a massive twin-turbo V8 engine. But the value is also wrapped up in extreme material engineering. The entire frame is constructed from Aircore carbon fiber, making it almost 500 pounds lighter than a Lamborghini. Oh, and to truly justify that $10 million price tag, the luxury is just absurd. The paint job is literally infused with real crushed diamonds. The exclusivity of this tier is so extreme that it actually alters the rules of the road. Because there's only one in the world, insurance companies flat out refuse to allow anyone but the registered owner to get behind the wheel. The liability of putting even a tiny scratch on diamond-infused paint is just way too high. And you know, this brilliantly illustrates how top-tier performance cars eventually cross a magic threshold. They stop being mere vehicles and transform into incredibly lucrative financial investments. Just listen to this quote from television legend and famous car collector Jay Leno about his McLaren F1. He says, "I paid $800,000, and people thought you'll never get your money back. And now, it's $20 million. Let's put that into perspective for a second, because Leno purchased this incredibly unique 3-seater car back in 1998. It has generated an astonishing, compounding return on investment. When you really do the math on that timeline, this vehicle has effectively earned its owner roughly $1 million a year, every single year, purely in sheer appreciation. So we're now seeing that at the $20 million mark, a car acts much more like a high-yield stock portfolio or a piece of prime real estate than a way to get to the grocery store. Section 4. Priceless Automotive History. Cars as Artifacts. Let's move to the final tier and see how this builds into a completely different asset class. At $30 and $50 million, the mechanical specs, the top speed, the engine size, the lightweight carbon fiber, honestly, none of that actually matters anymore. The staggering price tags are derived entirely from the unique human history and the legendary provenance attached to the metal. For example, that $30 million custom Ferrari, it was specifically built as a one-of-a-kind gift from the founder of Ferrari directly to the founder of Ford. It represents a massive iconic moment in automotive history. And the $50 million vintage Jaguar, well, that gets its value from being the daily driver of the legendary actor Steve McQueen. In fact, it's the very car he drove so aggressively he got his license suspended. At this point, you aren't buying a car, you're buying a physical piece of cultural mythology. To protect these rolling artifacts, owners and museums literally have to employ active police escorts just to navigate public streets. They have to ensure that ordinary traffic doesn't come anywhere near them, because a simple fender bender isn't just a headache with the insurance company, it's the literal destruction of history. It really proves just how incredibly fragile this level of value truly is. Which finally brings us right back to our ultimate crown jewel, the $100 million car. The very first Ferrari ever built in human history. Taking an asset this valuable out for a drive requires an operation that is way closer to a military transport than a weekend joyride. Just look at the logistics here. First, absolutely no one can drive it except a dedicated, highly trained museum representative. Second, you have to use a massive police blockade to completely close off a bridge, removing all other variables. Third, you deploy fleets of street cleaners to scrub the entire route of debris. And finally, you must physically fill in every single pothole on that road to ensure a bump doesn't shatter the vintage suspension. You're demanding perfectly sanitized, custom-paved roads just to protect the investment from the real world. Putting these two extremes head-to-head perfectly illustrates our journey today. On one end, you have a $1 pile of junk that requires 20 grand just to force it into motion. On the other end, a $100 million cultural artifact that requires closed bridges and an entire logistics team just to safely travel a few hundred yards. We've moved from paying for pure mechanical function to paying for technological impossibilities, and finally, paying for pure concentrated human history. It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? The next time you see a vehicle with a staggering price tag, ask yourself, are you paying for what the machine can mechanically do? Or are you paying for the irreplaceable, unquantifiable history it carries in its metal bones? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking beneath the surface of the world around you.